This is an orphan named Lisa. Lisa was a big flop as a computer, but the look and feel of Lisa survived. The icons, the graphic interface, the pull-down menus, and the mouse input were all modified to become an integral part of the Macintosh. And now the Macintosh has been modified in the new Mac SE and the new Mac 2. Today we take a look at the new generation of Macintosh computers on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible by Leading Edge, makers of IBM-compatible computer systems, including word processing with spelling correction, communication software, and Hayes-compatible 1200 and 2400 baud modems. Leading Edge, with over 1,000 service centers nationwide. Leading Edge, leading the way to the information age. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover developments in computer technology worldwide.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stewart, Cheifet, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, this is an add-on board, and you would assume, therefore, it's an add-on board for an IBM PC or compatible, maybe an Apple II, but not a Macintosh. Well, it's 1987, and this is an add-on board for the new Macs. They have slots, of course. In fact, if you look at the new Mac 2, it looks an awful lot like an IBM AT. If you look at the new IBM Personal System 2 computers, they look like Macintoshes. Have the two giants finally come together and agreed on what a personal computer ought to be?
Well, I think what they've done is they come together to try and compete for the same market. So basically, Apple learned from IBM's open architecture. With the open architecture, third-party suppliers put in boards that AT is used for things that IBM really didn't expect it to be used for. At the same time, IBM learned from Apple. Customers really like the user-friendly interface, the graphics, the color, the desktop publishing. So even though they haven't come together on the exact hardware, they come together on the philosophy.
Gary, we're going to take a look at the two new Macintosh computers today, the SE and the 2. We're going to start out by talking to some corporate computer types to find out if the Macintosh really has become a serious business computer.
The history of the Macintosh is similar to the history of the personal computer industry, full of victory and defeat, approval and rejection. Today, with Mac sales booming and two new machines joining the line, Apple seems to be pushing harder than ever to turn the Mac into a major contender in the business world.
I think that the pattern of growth that we've seen in the Macintosh marketplace is one from the hobbyist computer users and the hackers who were fascinated by the machine's potential to that growth occurring in the business world where that potential has been realized. Applications that have come out for the Macintosh have really begun to approach what the machine is capable of. And when the machine was released, there were really no serious business applications.
Colophon is a small design firm in San Francisco that specializes in Macintosh-generated graphics. Colophon is not on the Fortune 500 list yet, but it does have some big clients, and the company sees a growing acceptance of the Macintosh in corporate offices.
Usually the design department, or a few unorthodox managers who see the world in their own ways and don't follow corporate policy closely, will bring Macintoshes into their office. In the case of the design group, it makes perfect sense because the machine is so well suited to graphic tasks.
The Mac's talent for desktop publishing helped it through the corporate gates, but once inside, there are new obstacles to overcome.
In the past, the MIS department has been a central repository and control point for the way that information flows in the company. And that's a very powerful position for them to be in. Now we're proposing to bring in these computers, intelligent, independent workstations that can conduct tasks completely independently of a central host computer, that can communicate with one another independently of a central network. And I think that has far-reaching implications for that power structure.
Joining us in the studio now is Charlie Oppenheimer. Charlie's Apple's product manager for the new Macintosh SE. Gary?
Charlie, when I first bought a Mac a few years back, I found a couple screws in the back here that didn't work with a regular screwdriver. You couldn't get them out. What was the philosophy originally when the Mac first came out? of the closed architecture. Why was it closed up like that?
Well, at the time in 1984, we felt that we really had a very good idea of what our customers were going to need, and there was really no reason for most people to get in the box, and so it was really set up to be dealer serviceable only.
So the idea was to have a whole package solution. That was exactly what the customers
exactly
would take.
right.
Now, what's the change in philosophy now?
Well, now with the Macintosh SE and the Macintosh 2, we introduce open Macintoshes, Macintoshes that really represent a foundation on which our developers can be creative to add expansion hardware, application software, and so on.
Can you show us how you can get at the expansion chassis and so forth?
Sure. Let's talk about let's talk about the differences of the machine overall. You can see right away that we've got a different face. We've got a floppy disk drive here. On top, we have the option for a second floppy or an internal hard disk, which is what I've got here. If we take a look at the back of the machine, and we'll just turn that around, you can see here that we have many of the familiar ports that you've seen in the past. In addition, we have two connections over here called Apple Desktop Bus. That's the new connection medium for the keyboards and mice and other input peripherals. If we take a look inside the machine, pull the cover off, you see a very different Macintosh. And in fact, this Macintosh shares only one component with previous machines. That's the screen. Everything else has been completely redesigned. Over here you see a analog and power supply board. The power supply here is much more heavy duty, 75 watts instead of 50 on the previous machine. A fan, of course. If you have a hard disk, you've got to have a fan inside the machine. Over here, this is a 20 megabyte internal SCSI hard drive, and that is the hard disk option that we talked about. This is the accessory access port for mounting connectors for cards that install inside that need to connect with the outside world. You don't any longer have the Black & Decker solution of getting connectors into the box. If we take a look at the logic board, and you'll see that the logic board has many, many changes on it. I'll sort of tilt it up here. Right away you see this is the expansion slot for the cards. We'll come back to that. The machine has 1 megabyte of RAM. It expands to 4 megabytes just like the Plus. The 68,000 still running at the same speed. We have over here the ROM. The ROM has been expanded to 256K from 128K on the previous machines. This part over here is completely new for the machine. This is a gate array. It incorporates 19 chips from the Macintosh Plus, and it's the key to some important performance improvements that we have here. We've got 15 to 20% overall processing speed improvement, and SCSI performance is up to 2 times faster, so that's really important. If we focus in on the slot here, I'll show you an example of a board that would plug into the slot. This is a card from General Computer. It's a 68020 accelerator, and the way it would plug in would be just like so. Plugs in flat, and now you have an expanded machine. There are really 4 types of expansion boards that we see becoming available for the SE. We see this sort, the accelerator, the coprocessor. You know, there's an 8086 coprocessor from AST. There are communications cards, Ethernet, 3278, file transfer, terminal emulation, large screen adapters,
now, Charlie,
and so
that
on.
brings up a point. How do you take care of the problem of multiple cards in the machine at the same time?
That's right. Yeah, there is one slot, and many people will want to get more than one function inside the machine. That brings up the subject of multifunction cards, and they've been popular with many other machines, and you'll see them appearing here. I think the first type that has been introduced now that will be popular is the 68020 accelerator combined with a large screen adapter.
Charlie, you've got the slot in there now so that we can put an add-in board, but I think the manual says don't do it yourself. You've got to take it to your dealer. What's the point in that?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you know, as you can see, it was very easy for me to take apart the machine, but this isn't really the sort of thing that the average user would be good at doing. And so to ensure that we have the most reliable installation of the board, we really want to see the dealer do it. You know, this machine really was never designed from the start with the idea of having the user get inside, as we talked about. And so some of the features that you'd want to have inside are not really there to protect the user.
Okay, now Charlie, how does this? What's the cost comparison of the Mac, standard Mac, and then the SE?
Okay, well, you know, there's the Macintosh 512, the Macintosh Plus, the SE, and the 2. The Macintosh Plus is still at $21.99. This machine with 2 floppies would sell for $28.99, and with the internal hard drive option, $36.99.
Okay. Charlie, real quick, people who already own a Mac Plus are a little upset. There's no way to hardware upgrade to the capability of the SE. What was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, you know, we'd always like to see an upgrade available, and that was something that we considered. Unfortunately, in order to provide the kind of expansion and the internal hard disk features that we wanted, there was no way to provide an upgrade. And as you know, I said earlier that every component in here is different except for the screen. Well, that means there is an upgrade, but it's very, very laborious. And so we decided not to do that.
We're going to come back in just a second. We're going to take a look at the new Mac 2. It's got color, it's got slots, and it's got speed. Stay with us. We'll take a look at it. With us in the studio now is Didier Diaz, the product manager for the Macintosh 2, and back with us, Charlie Oppenheimer.
Didier, we've seen Apple introduce the Mac Plus. Now Charlie's shown us the SE, and you've got the Mac 2. Now, what target market is this? It must be different from the others.
Well, with its increased power, this Macintosh 2 is targeted at the higher end of our current marketplace. The business community who uses productivity applications such as spreadsheet, word processors, databases, etc., will use this machine. But as well, because of this increased power, we'll see the Macintosh enter or get an increased penetration in new markets such as engineering. We'll see as well lots of these machines in the university market, thanks, for instance, to the ability of this machine to run not only the Macintosh operating system, but as well the Unix operating system, which is very popular there.
Now, the SE that Charlie showed us is an open system. Apparently, the Mac 2 is also an open system. Can you show us how that works?
Right. The Macintosh 2 has been called an open Macintosh by lots of people, and I guess the reason is I just have to pull these two latches in the back, and I can now open the top and take it off. And that ease of opening the Macintosh will be important because our customers will be able to add cards in the machine very easily by just taking the top off and adding cards.
You just tilt it up a second to make sure our audience can see inside. That way, so we can see inside there before you pull that card out. Okay, great.
Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, the customers will be able to add cards such as this one. This is our video card, and it will allow us to drive both our black and white and our RGB monitor. A few things to point out on this card. First, here I have a configuration ROM. This is part of the NuBus standard. NuBus is the protocols we're using for our slots. It contains information about the card. What happens is at boot time, we scan all the slots and we read this ROM. We find out what the cards are out there. And this way, the customer doesn't have to worry about dip switches or anything of that kind. You put your card in, you boot, and the card is identified. Another very important feature of this card, this here, which is a color lookup table, it contains 16 million entries, 16 million colors. And I can display up to 256 colors at the same time on my screen. So 256 colors at the same time out of a palette of 16 million is something that hasn't been seen up to now on personal computer.
We'll get a chance to see that a little later.
We'll see that a little later, right. What do we have here? We have a chassis that can hold a hard disk and 1 or 2 floppy. The hard disk can be either 20 megabyte, 40 megabyte, or 80 megabyte. Just a few comments on the 40 and 80 megabyte drive. They both are 5¼ half-inch drive, and they have an access time on the 30 milliseconds, which is very fast. That allows us to transfer over 1.2 megabyte per second over our SCSI interface, and that will really give us a great speed when it comes to open applications, save large files, etc. So let me just put that away and show you the most important part of this computer. Now, as you can see, all we have left in here is the power supply, which is 250 watts, provides a lot of power for both the logic board, the slots, and the hard disk. And we have the most important part, as I said, which is this logic board. So the logic board contains the 020 and the 68881 arithmetic coprocessor. The 020 is a next generation processor from Motorola after the 68000, which is used in the Macintosh Plus and the Macintosh SE. It's a full 32-bit processor, such as the Intel 386, for instance. That allows us to get a speed increase over the Macintosh Plus up to 4 times, I would say. And then we decided to add as a standard this arithmetic chip. And I will show you what this arithmetic chip can do for us. Here we have the 6 NuBus slots, and I already told you a few things about the NuBus slots. Another characteristic of NuBus is that it allows a card in any slot to take over the entire machine. That's called the bus mastership capability. So in the future, when we see new processors coming on the market, you could put a card here with an 030, for instance, or any other kind of processor, and have this very fast processor take over the whole machine. Now, this machine is a Macintosh, and as every Macintosh, it has all kinds of ports built in. We have a SCSI port here, 2 serial ports, two Apple desktop bus port, which allows us to connect input devices, and a sound port. So what this means is you can have a machine with, as I showed you, 40 megabyte, 80 megabyte drive, two floppies, one tape backup connected outside the modem, and yet you have only used one slot. So 6 slots should be many for most of our users.
Didi, I want to make sure we have time to actually see it run. So I'm going to ask you to turn to the software now and actually run the two for us and give us a little demo.
Right, so all that great hardware gives us, first, great speed. Let me just show you what we'll do with current applications. I mentioned spreadsheets, word processor, etc. This is a Mac Paint, and I'm going to show you what I can do here with a graphic document. Here I can move this document. It's a fairly complicated document, lots of data here, and you see the speed at which I can move all these bits on the screen, and that's due to the speed of the 68020 and as well to the speed of our graphics routine contained in QuickDraw. And basically we'll see the same result on all the current applications, whether they're spreadsheet, databases, etc. We'll see increased speed and as well the ability to use a larger screen. This is a 13-inch screen. This is one of the two screen monitors available for this machine, 12 and 13-inch. But now, as I said, this machine will touch new markets. And let me show you a few of the components that will allow us to get into new markets. This is a demonstration of the power of the 68881 arithmetical processor. I'm drawing this equation, sinus x plus 0.75 sinus 2x, and that's the speed at which I would draw this equation without the arithmetic chip. Now, if I switch and go directly to the arithmetic chip, here is what happens. We get speed up to 200 times. So that will allow the Macintosh software to get into areas where it couldn't get up to now for lack of horsepower. Now we're going to see programs, for instance, using 3D rotations coming up on the Mac, modeling programs, etc. So I will just stop this and go to another of the feature of the Macintosh 2, which as well will push the Macintosh 2 into new areas. Let me turn this monitor here from black and white to color. One important point about this monitor is its resolution is so high that it can be used for both black and white and color.
I might mention, Didi, our audience is not really seeing this monitor in its true quality. They're seeing a flicker because of the television camera shooting it. That's not the way it really looks.
Right. It's due to the high refresh rate, actually, of the monitor, which is one of the reasons why it looks so good. This is an application which allows me to display digitized picture. Let me just bring up one of our vice president here. Our chief operating officer.
He paid you to get his picture on the show?
No, not quite, actually. He has another picture which is his favorite, but I won't be able to show it to you today. You see the speed at which I could move this image here, okay? And I'm moving here 8 bits, what's called 8 bits per pixel. I have actually, here I'm using the full power of the card, the 256 colors out of a palette of 16 million. That's what allows me, for instance, to have this smooth shading from color to color. Let me show you just another image that shows out the capability of the screen. Unfortunately, as you said, our viewers won't be able to see it quite right. But this is a ray tracing image. It's a computer-generated image where you set up your environment and the computer...
yeah, I'm going to have to interrupt you because we're out of time. It's a very impressive demo. Real quickly, what's the price on the Mac 2? What's the range?
The entry price is $38.95 for the entry CPU. The color computer that I have here with a 40 megabyte hard disk would cost you about $6,500.
Thank you very much. Okay, when a new piece of hardware comes out, the first question is there software to take advantage of it? Wendy Woods has a report on the status of new software for the new Macs.
If users wonder about software availability, the problem is magnified for software developers who risk losing big money if a machine isn't successful. Living Videotext was one of a few dozen companies that received prototypes of the SE and the Mac 2. They immediately went to work upgrading their More IDEA processor to utilize the Mac 2's color. But unlike decisions they've made in the past, the decision to support the new Macs was easy.
Well, I think you have to look at it from 2 angles. One is the economics of it. Do you think the machine is going to be successful in the marketplace? Does it answer the needs that the users have? You know, those are the very simple analytic decisions. The other side of it, you've got to be somewhat emotional about it. And for me, the Mac 2, as a Macintosh user myself, the Mac 2 was virtually everything that I had wanted on my wish list. And I found my heart going pitter-patter every time I thought about the idea of putting one of those on my desk. And so I knew for that reason, for both reasons actually, that it was important that we support the machine and that we develop software for it.
The SE can run virtually all current Macintosh software, so there's no shortage there. And developers see the expandability of the Macintosh 2 as its ticket to success, an open road for other companies to develop add-on products and new software. So most developers aren't worried and say that users will have plenty of software from which to choose as soon as the new 2s are coming off the assembly line as quickly as these SEs. In Fremont, California, for the Computer Chronicles, I'm Wendy Woods.
With us in the studio now is our resident analyst, Jan Lewis, and also our very own curmudgeon and commentator, George Morrow.
Jan, from a consumer standpoint, we have a whole range of machines you can buy from Apple. Which one of these things should you buy? Disregarding price, which one should you buy?
Well, if
or
you
how
really,
do you decide which one you're going to buy?
Clearly, you cannot disregard price. Otherwise, everybody would get the Mac 2. Yeah. I think that what you need to look at is what you want out of your system and how long you want it to last. The Mac SE right now is a very big seller. People who were buying the Pluses are now buying the SE. Eventually, of course, they're going to want to expand even more. So eventually, they're going to want expansion boxes. If you know that you're going to expand quite a bit, if you know you're going to use a lot of color, if you know you need a lot of the graphics, you might go to the Mac 2. Desktop publishing, for instance, I think probably the Mac SE is a better bet. And if you look at some of the, let's say, peripheral monitors, for instance, that are coming out for desktop publishing versus, let's say, for desktop video or for the graphics area other than that, you'll find the SE seems to be more of a desktop publishing machine. But the Mac 2 is highly expandable, and you'll get many, many years of enjoyment out of it.
Okay.
Okay, George, you've seen the SE and the 2. What do you think about these new computers?
Well, I think the 2 is an expression of a lot of market envy. You've got Apple that has seen IBM do so well and the corporations and the add-on people do so well. You're looking at an expression now of, gee, how do we get a piece of that action? They've come up with the new bus, and they've come up with color. And I think what's going on now is a fantastic musical game of chairs. Everybody is moving over into the position of what everybody else was doing a year ago. And it's going to be a lot of fun watching what happens.
Jan, what do you think about this battle, Macintosh trying to get into the IBM, the corporate, the business market? Is that going to work?
I think it's already working through the desktop publishing.
Yeah.
It's already working, even though when you talk to the corporations and they say who is on our approved list, you will not find the Macintosh there. Yet you walk up and down the halls of the corporations and there's no questions the Macintoshes are there. So I think already what they're doing is a very good wedge into the corporation, and this will take them much farther.
Apple has also done an awfully good job in networking, and that's probably another edge that they have in the corporation that's got them a leg up.
What about the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, George, you have a particular hardware expertise, and there's always questions, how is a 386 going to stack up against the 68020 in terms of just a horse race?
Raw processing power, they're very similar in power, but from what the fellows that have used it, the cognoscenti, seem to think there's a lot more overhead in the Mac 2 than there is in the present 386 machines, so the effective speed is somewhat lower. But both processors have got a lot of horsepower, and of course the engineering workstation market is now going to be an awfully exciting market, not only to buy products from, but to doing software
That certainly
development.
seems like a good place for the Mac 2.
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
Jan, last question. What about this change in philosophy Gary was talking about earlier? We heard about the closed Mac, and that was the whole philosophy of Apple Macintosh. All of a sudden, it's the total opposite. Is this sort of the end of the Steve Jobs era for good?
I think that's definitely the end of the Steve Jobs era as far as that goes. On the other hand, the one problem they're going to have as a result of being more open is there are going to be clones.
Yes.
Whereas with the old Mac, there weren't clones. So the one good legacy of Jobs is that it was unclonable. I think in the long run, of course, Apple comes out ahead. Whoever clones it are going to come out ahead, and the consumer is going to come out ahead.
Jan, George, thank you very much. That's about all the time we have for our look at the new Macintoshes. We'll be back in just a minute with this week's Computer News.
Cynthia Steele sitting in for Stewart Cheifet this week. Some West German computer hackers have tapped into NASA's secret files. They were able to gain unlimited access to information on the Challenger and rocket boosters. The computer buffs took advantage of a flaw in the computer security system. They were able to change all the information in the files, including data on at least 20 NASA computers. Ricoh, the Japanese maker of cameras and photocopiers, has added another impressive tool to its inventory. The manufacturer has combined a photocopier with a scanner. and shrunk the unit down to book size. But what really makes this copier interesting to computer users is a digital attachment that can store scanned images in digital form. The Army is getting a hand from a new voice-operated expert system called the Automated Intelligence Maintenance System, or otherwise known as AIM. AIM will help the Army to maintain their vehicles. It will ask the mechanic questions. The mechanic then answers yes or no. Once AIM figures out the problem, it displays diagrams on its computer screen. AIM has an input vocabulary of 12 words, but an unlimited output vocabulary. AIM can maintain helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft, and other mechanical and electronic systems. It's time now for this week's software review. Here's Paul Schindler.
Come into my laboratory, or better yet, come into the laboratory of Dark Castle, a nifty new Macintosh arcade game. It has animation, it has sound effects, it has a sense of humor. Everything but color, and now that the Mac has color, I'm sure Dark Castle will too. This game is a tough one to play. What we're showing you here is the automated demonstration. You walk in with a certain number of lives and some rocks to throw at the creatures attacking you from all sides. And you walk out, if you're lucky, with your hide. Dark Castle runs on the Apple Macintosh and costs $50 from Silicon Beach Software in San Diego. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Paul Schindler.
The computer industry is responsible for creating new jobs, devices, technologies, and lots of new words. More than 1,000 in the last decade. The new Random House dictionary, hot off the press, shows computer-related words make up the greatest number of entries. In fact, Random House says since it first published the dictionary 20 years ago, computer-related words outnumber other topics by a wide margin. The closest competitor turned out to be new words related to food and cooking. Gallaudet University plans to launch a program teaching written English to deaf students. The project will use networked computers and allow students to carry on conversations at workstations arranged in ring-like local area networks. The instructor communicates with the students online. Students in turn can speak with the teacher or each other in the same manner. The project can open up a new world to deaf students traditionally taught sign language, which has a different grammatical structure than spoken English. The Commerce Department's Bureau of Standards has a new way to fight fires, this time with a computer. It's called Hazard One. This system creates a fire and observes its development, but it's all on paper. Hazard One figures out the amount of gas and smoke a fire would generate in a small house. It also plots out the likely actions of the occupants based on interviews with people who have survived fires. Unlike other systems, Hazard One considers many more factors that may influence the outcome of the fire. Physics, chemistry, fluid mechanics, heat transfer, biology, toxology, and human behavior. And considering all these factors may save more lives. Holland's version of our own FBI has decided to wait out the software age. Its computer system delighted in confusing the good guys with the bad. Wanted list included names of innocent citizens. The software remains unnamed, and in Holland's police department, unwanted. That's it for Computer Chronicles for this week.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible by Leading Edge, makers of IBM-compatible computer systems, including word processing with spelling correction, communication software, and Hayes-compatible 1200 and 2400 baud modems. Leading Edge, with over 1,000 service centers nationwide. Leading Edge, leading the way to the information age. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles cover the latest in microcomputer technology throughout the world. Byte, the international standard.